Actually, one extremely big private equity family office is a very legendary figure. He actually says, I don't want your tokens. Don't send me your tokens. But you invested in this thing. This is where all the economic value lies. He just finds it very dangerous to own it. So I don't know. I don't know why.
Digital asset treasuries are evolving at light speed. Nasdaq listed Heritage Distilling recently announced a partnership to adopt IP tokens, the native token of Story, as a reserve asset. Joining me now to unpack the news is Story co-founder and CEO SY Lee. SY, welcome to the show.
Hello, Jenn. Great to be here.
Yeah, great to have you here. We're talking about this announcement that came out recently. Heritage Distilling Holding Company, which is listed on the Nasdaq, announced a private placement of $220 million for digital asset treasury strategy focused on the IP token. Now, there is a lot there. So why don't we just zoom out 30,000 feet and talk to me about what's going on here?
This is a digital asset treasury, vehicle, right? And obviously it's been pioneered by the MicroStrategies of the world, now BitMines of the world with Ethereum. And we're applying that to IP token. And what's unique here is that we're relatively much smaller than Bitcoin and Ethereum. We're top 50 token. And we're still in the very early cycle of our token, a 7th month after our listing, right? TGE. And we decided that Story is much more accessible than other tokens to the US public market, right? So, I'm not trying to put down other kind of chains here, but if you say, okay, how are you different from Ethereum? I'm doing move language. I'm like SVM. I have just faster TPS. Actually, a lot of probably the public market investors don't really know how to think about that. But what Story is doing, tokenizing intellectual property, which is a massive asset class, $80 trillion from entertainment franchises to biomedical patents. And this asset class is illiquid. And also to license those assets, it's still it's in the world of legal docs and lawyers. We want to tokenize and make that programmable, make the licensing much easier. Plus, this data and IP is the most essential input for AI. And we want to basically solve the data bottleneck of collecting those data and licensing the data. Is a very accessible story to the public market. And we thought it was very important that we expand kind of the exposure to IP token by actually having this vehicle in the US public market. So actually the folks who don't know about us and who still feel afraid to buy tokens directly can actually have that exposure through this digital asset treasury.
Midnight is introducing a novel approach to token distribution. The Midnight Glacier Drop is the first in a multi-phase distribution of the Night token aimed at empowering a broad, diverse community to secure the future of the Midnight network. Holders of ADA, BTC, ETH, SOL, XRP, BNB, AVAX, and BAT are eligible to participate in the Glacier Drop phase. Help usher in the next generation of blockchain with rational privacy and cooperative tokenomics on the Midnight network. To learn more about the Midnight Glacier Drop, visit midnight.gd and claim your night.
I want to quickly lay a foundation for our audience here, for folks who haven't learned about Story yet, and this is their first piece of content that they're consuming where they're hearing about Story. Story is really a place for creators to license their IP, to get credit for their work, to monetize that work, and to be able to track it. But just talk to me a little bit about the value prop of Story.
So I think there are two things that we do. We tokenize intellectual property. It is, unlike stock or T-bills, it is still illiquid, right? So we've actually tokenized everything from Justin Bieber's Peaches, kind of a partial music right, to Blackpink's music, BTS music, a lot of different types of IP. That's basically tokenizing economics rights around that IP and make it investable, make it tradable. You can now get yields. IP is a very valuable asset, like stock or T-bills and so on and so forth. It's a very massive asset class. So we do that. Not only that, once the IP is tokenized, we actually tokenize the usage right. We make the IP programmable. So what I mean by that is, say if you want to remix the Justin Bieber song, say you want to actually now you can actually make a game out of someone's IP with vibe coding very easily. So I want to make a game out of Hello Kitty's IP. and actually, make a very, very interesting arcade game out of Hello Kitty, right? You have to talk to the owner of that IP, talk to a bunch of lawyers, bunch of agents, and so on and so forth. And actually, a lot of people, if you go on the TikTok, people are remixing someone else's IP left and right, because now AI tools make it extremely easy for you to actually remix those IP. You can have like Tom Cruise deepfake remix online on TikTok and so on and so forth. But let's say you actually want to commercialize that. You want to get ad revenue. So there's a funny incident on the internet. There's a clip called Harry Potter Balenciaga ad, which got 10 to 20 million views. It's like a Balenciaga ad with Harry Potter to Ron Weasley showing up. And that ad went viral, tens of millions of views. They cannot put an ad because they know Warner Brothers or J.K. Rowling will sue them. So they're actually getting crowdfunding on Patreon for donation to actually get those clips done. But instead of that, what if Harry Potter or Warner Brothers actually have a built-in licensing remixing terms around you use my IP, remix those IP to create a lot of viral content, but just give me this revenue, give me this attribution, give me this graphical relationship attribution through small contracts. So that's what we do. We've tokenized a lot of music IPs. We have actually tokenized things like Adidas design or Crocs design so that people can make fashion derivatives and so on and so forth. Just to give you my background, I sold a company in mobile storytelling space to Kakao for $500 million 4 years ago. So I've been kind of in the entertainment space for a long time, but IP is not just entertainment. Now with AI, the biggest kind of IP vertical that is actually very, very in need is what we call real world data. When I say real world data, so ChatGPT is an internet-based model. So now the next generational model is physical AI models, like robotics model, biopharma model. And if you're Tesla Optimus robot team, and I want to actually train the robot to actually hold a coffee cup, even if you scrape the entire internet's data, you cannot have a robot hold a coffee cup. You need what you call an egocentric video footage, like have a GoPro on your head and film this a gargantuan amount of hours of you holding a coffee cup in different direction, in different lightings, different angles, and different physical environments. And then the robot can actually start to use their hand in dexterity that you need, a level that you need, and so on and so forth. So what we do, we just launched an app called Poseidon, and it's actually starting a DP app in the next 10 days. Actually, what's actually it's doing is kind of like what you've done with Axie Infinity. You play a game, you earn tokens. In the same way, you play this app to upload your audio, upload your video, and you actually earn tokens. Poseidon points, story tokens. On the other side, actually Tesla or OpenAI or Anthropic or NVIDIA Robotics can actually license this data to actually train. Because now all these data points will be tokenized as IP, which is licensing terms attached. And previously, what you've done is actually before this happened, like company like Scale AI, they hired 10,000 people in India. They collect data, label the data. It's very inefficient, very centralized. But instead of that, anyone around the world can upload it. It's cross-sourceable on a global scale. And you get instant stablecoin Poseidon points, IP tokens in return for all these IPs, real world data IPs getting tokenized. So IP is such an expansive concept. You have Justin Bieber's music pieces being tokenized. You have Balenciaga's or Adidas design tokenized and being used as a programmable IP to create derivative IPs. Anyone can be a fashion designer with AI remixing tool and actually 3D print to share the revenue with fashion design brand. Two, actually real world data. Everything you do, me dishwashing, me holding a coffee cup, is a data that is an IP that can be utilized for AI training, for robotics training. So that's kind of what we're doing. So I think it is a story. It's an RWA story. It's an IP tokenization RWA story. It is a consumer story for crypto. It is also an AI story for crypto. Like I think some of the AI partnerships that we'll be announcing is a very unique ones that you haven't seen in crypto, right? So it's a very interesting bet at the intersection of AI, crypto, RWA. And we want more folks to hear this in this US public market. People are just thinking, okay, stablecoin, just some financial rail for crypto, but it's so much more than that, what crypto can do.
Let's talk about the digital asset treasury for just a second. The transaction is PIPE, so private investment in public equity with a token exchange component, which I think is a little bit more complex than some of the other digital asset treasuries we've seen make headlines in recent weeks. Talk to me a little bit about why this specific structure and how it's going to work.
Yeah. So because we're a small token, right? A smaller token, you want to start with the bigger market cap to get the right kind of volume on Nasdaq. So we raised about $100 million cash, which is going to buy tokens with transfer restriction at a discount from the foundation. And then $120 billion worth of token were actually also contributed at a discount, right? And then so that gives about, because it was contributed at a discount at the end of the transaction, after you buy from the foundation with the cash, you see the token is actually being contributed about $300 million of token in the balance sheet of that entity. And then it actually allows, if it trades at the NAV, net asset value of the tokens in the balance sheet, about $300 million of market cap, if it's premium even higher. So we thought, to get the flywheel going, right? I do a few things. We want a good critical mass of tokens in the balance sheet, number one. Number two, what it does is, because the foundation is actually contributing token in exchange for stocks, not just cash raised that's buying tokens. What it does for the foundation is that we can ensure that the purpose of this vehicle is in deep alignment with the ecosystem and the foundation and the blockchain. Because say you're a very minor shareholder as a foundation or so on and so forth, there is a risk that this vehicle does whatever it wants in 2 or 3 years, right? But here, because we are a significant shareholder, we can be a shepherd in how this is being run. Because of that, we have a very strong control and influence over how this vehicle will be run, right? So it can be in deep alignment of how the blockchain ecosystem will pan out. And because of that, say in a few years, let's say, oh, our stock is not doing well, we want to just dump the tokens. We don't want that to happen as a foundation, right? Because we have a significant skin in the game, we can really direct this vehicle and influence this vehicle in the future on how this is going to be operated as a big shareholder of this company, as a foundation.
You mentioned MicroStrategy as an example of a digital asset treasury company that everyone knows at the beginning of our conversation. And something that I hear people say often is, why own MicroStrategy when you can just earn Bitcoin? Why get shares of Heritage when people can just own IP? What's the argument there?
Obviously, I want you to own IP tokens, but the reason why this is very attractive is still, it's incredible. But because I've had a lot of Web2 investor for last company, like there were about 10 to 20 investors in my cap table who are supposed to get story tokens. And I asked them still repeatedly, give me your wallet addresses. And these like big family offices, these big institutional funds in Web2, they'll ask me, I don't have wallets. I actually, one extremely big private equity family office, he's a very legendary figure. He actually says, I don't want your tokens. Don't send me your tokens. But you invested in this thing. This is where all the economic value lies. He just finds it very dangerous to own it. So I don't know why. I don't know if he feels it's going to be hacked or something, but there's still a lot of anathema and hostility, or actually uncomfortable feeling around getting the tokens direct and being in the custody of them and hold and so on and so forth for family offices and institutional funds and so on and so forth. After the exit, I also allocated some money to some funds, and they actually are happy to hold MicroStrategy. Actually, you see them allocated to MicroStrategy, but they will never buy tokens on Coinbase or Binance. So it is where the industry is. Still, you see the cyber hack news, people getting drained on their wallets, and people don't know how to, especially all these funds that I interacted with in the Web2 space, how to stake, all these things. It requires multiple hours of education. But here, you go to your brokerage account, how you buy NVIDIA, how you buy Microsoft, how you buy Google, Alphabet, and Meta. You just buy this shares. They actually stake for you. They actually do that for you. So most of these funds out there, most of the institutional funds, they have a much bigger balance sheet and firepower than a retail investor. they feel a lot more comfortable and they're asking for equity vehicles. So even last week, I was talking to kind of Middle Eastern big funds, like they couldn't invest in story tokens, IP tokens. Like, so I've had the relationship for multiple years, but they just don't want to buy the tokens. But now that there's equity vehicle, now there's conversation. I can actually pitch and so on and so forth, right? So for the funds who don't have the crypto mandate of holding tokens directly, they can now get exposure to this vehicle.
That's really interesting. I mean, because I've heard some people say, this digital asset treasury thing is a fad. I think Anthony Scaramucci said that at some conference or at some talk recently. But it's interesting when you explain it like this. It really is a vehicle for the more traditional financial firms to exposure to these tokens.
It's still 10 to 20 investors on my 50 to 60 people cap team. They still haven't claimed their tokens when I asked them repeatedly because they just don't have wallets.
Do you think this is going to change anytime soon? Or do you think we're just going to see more ecosystems and more projects partner with publicly listed companies and offer similar offerings?
I think it will take time for folks to get comfortable, right? You need less news of hacking and draining wallet out there from CoinDesk and many other news outlets. And those news are much less frequent. As people see that this technology get more mature, they will feel more comfortable directly investing into tokens. And that's why ETF was a big news. Bitcoin ETF, Ethereum ETF, right? That's why, the cycle started because of Bitcoin ETF. Story actually is still more infant ecosystem. We're not going to be able to get ETF right away, but this is a step towards it. We got Grayscale Trust, where a credit investor can invest in. We got this vehicle on the public market, public partner, right? So it will take time. And actually, more than Bitcoin or Ethereum, right? Actually, smaller tokens require this kind of vehicle, even in my opinion. Because, still, it is very hard for you to access IP token instead of Bitcoin or Ethereum, right? So it's not on ETF and so on and so forth. It's not on multiple exchange ETF. So I think it was a right choice. And we're probably the lowest market cap token that's ever to be kind of, we're still sitting at $5 to $8 billion fully diluted valuation. And we're not 100, 200, 300 like Ethereum or Solana. But we want that exposure for institutional investors. And that could really accelerate our vision. And I think it was absolutely the right choice.
All right. The last thing I'm going to ask you here, S.Y., before I let you go, is why this company, why a craft distiller? And is it going to continue operations as is? Is it change to have more synergies with Story? How's that going to work?
Our plan is to really build a strong validator business, at which point the company can pivot toward this end. Ultimately, we will have a rebranding to something, it can be IP holdings or IP strategy or IP, story holdings or whatever. But ultimately, there will be rebranding. There will be a pivot. But for now, it's going to continue as operation as we build up our validator business. For now, it's our absolute aim to keep the operation intact. And alongside with it, we're going to start building up the validator business.
S.Y., thanks so much for joining me today. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much.